You're wanting your bass tone to drop an octave and shake the walls, but you're stuck between the clean tracking of one pedal and the gritty synth vibes of another one. Well, you're not alone. The Boss OC2 and the EBS OctaBass are two legendary octave pedals you can find inside your Line 6 Helix and are found on pedal boards around the world. And each of them has its own completely unique and different vibe. In this video, we're going to do a head-to-head between the Octave, Boss's OC2 pedal, and the bass Octave, which is Line 6's version of the EBS pedal, to work out what should be on your signal chain. Let's have a look. Hey, I'm Twisty, and today we're going to dive into the art of octave down bass and look at two of the most iconic models of octave pedals made available in your Line 6 Helix. We're going to cover the history of each effect, the players that made them famous, some of their tonal differences, and if you hang around to the end, we'll build two patches showing how to configure these pedals with your Helix. So whether you're playing funk, R&B, pop, or synth rock, this video will help you find the right tool to get the vibe you're chasing. You're looking for that big, deep, low end for your bass. Maybe you're trying to fill out a three-piece band, maybe you're emulating some synth bass lines, or maybe you just want to get that subby studio sound. But not all octave pedals are created equal. Some are gritty and glitchy in a good way, while others are smooth and clean and track really tightly. And if you pick the wrong one, your tone might get lost in the mix or be too clinical for the style that you're trying to get. Let's explore some of the top contenders that you can find in the Helix. In 1982, Boss released the OC2 octave pedal. You can find it in the Helix as the Octave model, and it became famous for its glitchy analog sub-octave character. It tracks monophonically, which means it only picks up one note at a time, so you can't play chords or double noting, or it gets a bit of a warble sound. It has the ability to add one or two octaves down from the note you're playing. Most commonly, they're used as the octave 1 down only because the bass register is quite low, especially if you're using a 5-string bass. The second octave's subs are very low and either makes your mix go to mud really quickly or it's not really well heard. Playing in the upper registers, if you're looking at doing some soloing, etc., then having that extra sub kick in a little bit may give you some advantage. But for general playing, up the top end of the neck or the bottom end of the neck, which way you're looking at it, having that second octave is a little bit muddy. The pedal being analog does give a slight bit of latency to your playing, but it's in a unique and synthy vibe style. It's not going to put you off your playing and you probably won't even notice it, but it just gives that bit of vibe to the play. It's still a favorite today with neo soul, funk, and modern synth bass circles. And two of the bass players that I am familiar with using this pedal is Pino Palladino and Guy Pratt when he was doing the work with Madonna and Pink Floyd. This pedal is great when you just want to add a bit of character and movement or a vintage synth vibe with some grit to your tone. Good for rock as long as you're not trying to play some chords or you work around the glitch, as we'll see in the demo. Now the bass Octave model in the Helix is modeled after the EBS OctaBass pedal. This was actually EBS's first stomp box and it came out in 1992, which was born from the octave circuit that they had in their bass amps at the time. Bass players really loved that and wanted that function stand alone without using the EBS amps. One of the unique things about this pedal is it has a range mode between high, mid, and low, allowing you to effectively EQ the pedal to get the best advantage out of the registry that you're playing in. So if you're playing at the upper registry, soloing, etc., you'll set it for one range. And if you're playing down on the bottom, for general playing, you may have that for a different range. And we'll have a look at those ranges and their effects when we start looking at the OctaBass later. The EBS is a modern studio-grade octave pedal. It has clean digital tracking and it works polyphonically. Unlike the Boss pedal, it'll allow you to double notes and chords and will track the lower note as you play along, tracking nicely as you change between notes or between those doubles. It has less character than the Boss, but it also has more precision. It's not going to warble as much when you're changing notes or when you're playing along. And the use of the range selector means that you can also control that tracking. This effect is designed to work well in a polished modern mix. So if you're looking for clean metal or a nice clean funk, then this is the pedal that you'd probably want to look for in comparison to the Boss model. Bassists who are using this pedal, Billy Sheehan has used it in the past. It's not on his regular live rig, but he's known to have used it. Tal Wilkenfeld and a lot of studio bassists around the world have this on their pedal for that octave function when they need it. So when would you use this one over the Boss? If you want a tight, fat low that tracks cleanly without any glitches, then this is the pedal that you'd want to use. Let's go and check out the Helix to see how we would configure these within a preset. All right, so we're going to have a look at the two models within the Helix, one to represent the OC2, which is the Octaver, and the other one is the EBS bass Octaver. I'm using my custom-made, I bashed the shit out of it. I'm using my custom-made bass that I built, but I'm only just using the P pickups, so this is be representing a P bass sound, kind of, sort of. I'm using a very simple signal path. I put a compressor at the beginning. This allows me to normalize or get rid of the peak lows and highs of my playing. It means that the signal getting into the front end of the octave pedal is going to be the best signal that I can give it for it to then do its job. I like to use the compressor, especially when I'm using octave and modulation pedals, is it makes the signal coming in a lot cleaner and controlled. Gets the best out of the effect. I then move into the pedal and I then go into an amp, and this one I've just got up as an SVT4 Pro. And what cabinet did I pick? And an 8x10 cabinet. So without the effect pedal on, this is the clean sound that I'm going to get. If I play double stops, so you hear very clean, punchy bass sound, just the way I like it. Now, if we look at the Boss pedal first, it's very simple. Even I can get it right. There's the octave down, there's the second octave down, and then there's the dry level. So the first octave down, if I'm playing an E, it'll play the lower. So that's the sound that I should be getting, right? Let's see how it goes. And you start to hear that wobble. We'll come back to that. The second octave down then means it's going to play a lower octave again below that. So not only am I going to be playing the E, I'm going to play the E an octave lower and E an octave lower again. So if you're playing right up if you're playing the open E string, then putting that second octave in is going to give you a much, if I bring that up, much deeper lower end. However, that can get very, very muddy very, very quickly. So the most common way of using this pedal is to have the octave down one up full. So you're getting your original note plus one octave below. You turn the second octave off, so you're only getting that one octave. And then you dial in the dry level, or how much of the dry signal you want to mix with your octave pedal. a good rule of thumb is going to be around about 5 or 6. So you get enough drive in there to keep the bass driving, but you've still got that bottom end. So this is... If I increase the dry level, I get less effect, more of my normal sound. If I drop it right off, I'm basically only getting the more like a synth sound. So again, I personally like it around about the level 6, 5, 6. Play around with it. How you blend that in is going to be up to your ears and the sound you're getting. But from a picking up out of the box, this is not a bad starting point. Now we talk about glitching. So you can hear that pedal, it's starting to warble or glitch as I'm playing. If I try to play 2 notes, it's struggling to track which one of those notes I actually want it to octave down on. That's that monophonic phase, or monophonic function. That's an effect that you can use within the pedal. So not only am I getting that octave down, but I can then play around with that warbling to get a different, unique vibe going with my playing. Not always going to sound good, but you'll get the idea. So again, just because it's glitchy doesn't mean it's not going to be good for your tone. It just means it's a uniqueness that this particular pedal brings to your tone, not just the octave side. So if we now look at the EBS Octaver, OctaBass, the EBS model, you find that under the legacy modeling. So it's one of the older models that came with the Helix. You find the other one under stereo mono, but this one you find under legacy. Now it's got 4 controls. One of those is level, and the level, as we know from within Helix, gives the volume level of the block within the preset. It doesn't change the tonal characteristics of that. So that just allows me to gain stage the block on that signal path. Tone represents that range control that you find on the physical pedal. The lower the value I have, the darker and rounder the octave, or the thicker the sub bass. The higher I have it, the brighter, more defined that is. It'll cut through better. And you can already hear that warbling that we got off the OC2 is not there. It's a lot cleaner. I like that tone to be about 50%, so it's picking up, because that means I can play up here or down here. And it'll track nicely for me most of the time. So the next 2 controls we have are normal and octave. Normal affects the level of dry signal coming through, a bit like the blend or mix on another pedal. And the octave is the volume or the level of the affected signal, or the wet signal coming through. So think of it as 2 faders. In fact, the Helix have done it really well. It looks like 2 faders. So the more of the normal I have, the more dry signal coming through. So up here I'm getting a lot of that dry signal to punch and not lose the articulation. If I drop that right off, I'm going to get... I don't get the punch and drive of the original note coming through as much. So personally, I like to keep that all coming through. Octave then looks at the level of the affected signal. And so the less I have of that, the less volume of the octave. You can hear that's almost unaffected. Whereas if I come up full, if I drop the normal well. Really unattractive. So blend those two together the way you like it. Again, I personally like the maximum amount of normal or dry signal coming through, and then I blend the octave in to deal with that. As you increase those volumes, make sure that you adjust the level of the overall patch so that it counters the increase in volume that you've just done. For a bit more of an advanced look, if we look at bi-amping the effect, then I can have my bottom path going through with a fairly flat signal with a B15 cabinet. And for the top signal, I'm using the Mandarin bass amp to give me that bit of drive and cut through the mix. And I'm putting that with a 4x10. So my top signal is going to be nice and drivey and fairly thin. And the bottom end, once I put the octave pedal on it and the more lower toned amp, I'm going to get a nice clean sub with a bit of grit at the top. Now, I personally prefer to put a compressor on both paths, and because I'm using a Helix and I do. If you've got a physical pedal board, you may only have one compressor. Just put it in the front of, as long as it hits before the Octaver is the best way to put it. So if I now listen to this one, now you can hear the glitch in the background because this is the OC2. I didn't want this to be clean, but swapping that out to the Octave pedal. So putting the pedal in front of some drive gives that grit, and by bi-amping it, I can control those two paths. But that's a little bit more advanced, and you may not be up to that yet. So leave some comments about which one you thought was the best option and which one you think you might use the most. I must admit, the more I play with octave pedals, the more I become in love with them, and to the point I now have one on my live rig. I don't use it for every song, but it's nice to kick in there and get that really low deep every now and again, especially when the guitarist goes off and does a solo and twiddles somewhere, or you just want to go and scare the Jiminy Crickets out of the drummer when he's kicking. Put that big low in, it's great. So which octave pedal meets your needs from the Helix board? Do you want that vibe and vintage synthiness that you get from the Boss OC2 or the Octave within the Helix? Or do you want that tight, mix-ready subtones that polyphonically track you as you're playing? You might need the OctaBass. Regardless of which pedal you choose, whether it's going to be on your pedal board or as a model within your Helix, Quad Cortex, etc., make sure you watch out for those extreme low octave blends. If you're using that Boss and you try to lower in that -2 second octave, this might sound huge when you're soloed, but it can muddy up your mix really quickly when the rest of the band starts to come in and there's other noise going on. Especially in a live room when there's lots of reverberation around and other subs that are going through. You know, using a big 18-inch subs in the live rig, some of these just get lost and just wobble around the room as standing waves and it becomes really, really muddy in the mix. So just be careful of that, and I would use with taste for your live rig. In the studio, knock yourself out. Make sure you drop a comment below on which octave pedal you use, if you're using one. If you're not, let me know why you don't like them. And if you are, which pedal you're using. One from the model, or have you got a real one on the pedal board? I may need to swap mine out for one on the pedal board, and I'd really like to know what you're using. Remember, building your rig is more about a plan than by accident. So don't forget to check this video out to get the next tips. Catch ya.